if you're a new business and you have no preconceptions of machining, you should be looking at the best way to do it. There's nothing wrong with the tried and tested methods that got us to where we are here today, but having none of that preconception or notion, it meant we started off with a different mindset.
Welcome to the MTD podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a very proud member of the MTD team. We have a fantastic podcast lined up for you today from Wath Group, learning about their evolution and journey with Haas Automation UK. I'm joined by three very special guests. Firstly, Matt Bedford, welcome to the MTD podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us today, Matt.
Looking forward to it.
Secondly, it's the third generation of the Wath Group. Will Bedford, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to be speaking to you today, and I'm looking forward to pick your brain in this podcast. And third, but not least, James Lee, Director at Haas Automation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back again.
It's always a pleasure. I keep saying that all the time, but it really, really is. So, guys, we've had a fantastic day today, looking at the evolution, really, of your business and how it's grown. And I'd like to start with you, really, Matt, and to tell our audience about your business, where it started from and where it is today, and really touch upon how you got into CNC machining, because it's only been 2 years. You've been going 41 years, but it's only been 2 years since you've started on this journey. So, tell our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, it was. It's 41 years, 1980. It was my father that set it up, making jet wash hoses, would you believe, on how to wash cars. Then we progressed into electronic cable assemblies, how we put wires inside of hoses, would you believe, to protect them for the mining industry. And then fast forward quite a number of years, we started to develop our own products. And I think this is where the journey for us started to come on the CNC, was that we were starting to design products for ourselves rather than on other people. And then we had this reliance, should we say, on other people to manufacture the sub-components of the stuff that we were using. And it was kind of at that point that we kind of went, we like to control it ourselves. We want to do it ourselves, but we had no idea at all, what was involved in CNC. And I think that was the start of our journey. And literally 2 years ago, and neither of us, myself or William, or even my father, had any experience at all in CNC manufacturing. So it was a big leap of faith for us to get to a point where we're gonna actually make our own stuff. And I still remember it with Will. Are you sure? Can we do this? Because I know I can't. I'm getting too old to actually program and do things like that. But luckily, for us now, he persuaded me to, it was the right path for us to take.
So, Matt, second generation,
Yeah.
and now Will, third generation. You got tasked with, bringing CNC technology into this facility and actually making your own components. Again, can you tell our listeners a little bit about, your journey, and how there's so many different machine tool providers out there, from not ever touching a CNC machine before. How did you even start, figuring out who to go and approach and what machines to buy?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest, right at the beginning it was very overwhelming, and anybody looking to get into machining, I can see how it can be a minefield. And what actually happened was I literally just delved straight into Google, if you really want to be honest with it. It was that I visited a few trade shows, met Haas, met a few other different companies, and just kind of started off and try to understand what we required. What drives machining? It's literally watching as many YouTube videos as humanly possible. It's trying to get the experience of others so we didn't make the same mistakes. And it's very easy to go one of two ways. You can either succeed or you can fail trying. But coming through to the Haas machine, our first machine was a Haas Super Mini Mill 2, which was a cracking bit of kit. We only had it for 6 weeks. We outgrew it within 6 weeks. And starting off, we built a very good relationship. It was just grown and grown. We've grown with Haas. And if it wasn't that little bit of hand-holding, bit of a kick.
A lot of hand-holding.
A lot of hand-holding. but also not being afraid to try to push a bit harder. That first super mini mill, we got to a point where we were hitting it that hard. We had it skating around the workshop, cutting stainless, literally full depth of cut. In my naivety on first starting, I had it trochoidal cutting stainless 316 with a 20 mil diameter end mill, and it's not. It's a great piece of kit, but it's not designed for doing it. But we were slogging it full pelt, and thanks to Haas, obviously recognising where we were going, we moved up to a UMC 500. Now, this is a full 5-axis CNC machine. So this is 7 weeks into starting CNC machining. We've gone full 5-axis. This is, everyone thinks we're mad, but it's worked 2 years on. It's worked quite well. That UMC 500 was our workhorse. Literally everything we built was on that machine. It wasn't up until a year after we invested in our first lathe. Again, we went for a classic, if you go hard, go hard or go home. We bought a DS30Y twin spindle, arguably one of Haas's best lathes, with no experience in turning as well. And this was ground up. This is fresh. This is no preconception of how we must produce parts. So as a company, we start designing our own products. We're engineers, but we're not mechanical engineers. We're electronic engineers. We are, shout out to our universities. Most of us were Sheffield Hallam, the old polytechnics, so very practical universities. And it kind of drives you to think, well, how can we do something else out of the box? Which is why we looked at a lot of the CAM software, and different CAM didn't meet our needs. But again, Haas, being spot on with this, they have a partnership with Autodesk. So the post-processors for their machines were there right in our hands. So we could get work from, literally we'd draw it up in our CAD software, we'd program it in the CAM software, and just drag and drop as much as we have a little joke about that saying in our company, drag and drop. It's kind of banned now, but after a bit of hard work, it has moved to that point. So you get your generic set of tools. Obviously, anybody that uses one tool to do everything is not a good way to go. But it's getting that library, it's getting the machine set up, it's then getting the work holding. Work holding is key, as we've discussed.
Yeah. So Will, you've took on a journey with Haas. And already you're evolving significantly, together. These transitions from a 3-axis to a full 5th-axis simultaneous, and we'll be discussing the latest investment very shortly during this podcast. But to many, they may think that this, you're growing too fast. You're 3-axis to 5th-axis in such a short period of time, and you're really pushing the boundaries in regards to how hard you're hitting the parts.
I would wholeheartedly like to say to anybody who's starting off is, do not be scared of 5-axis. Haas, especially with the UMC 500, literally I could not recommend any more for that machine as a starting machine. And it can quite easily be a workhorse. The ability, as I quickly learned, to hit multiple sides of a job is worth more than I can't possibly imagine. It's nearly all of our products always have 2 opposite faces that need to be, obviously, but that 5-axis meant we had everything done in 2 ops. And there was a few jobs with a bit of playing, like with tab machining, where I could get one part off in one hit. Obviously, with a bit of sacrifice, but that knowledge, especially if you're a new business and you have no preconceptions of machining, you should be looking at the best way to do it. There's nothing wrong with the tried and tested methods that have got us to where we are here today, but having none of that preconception or notion, it meant that we started off with a different mindset. So when I compared to some of our subcontractors, a job for a few people, they say, it would take 2 hours to machine one of our items. So then I was completely perplexed when I did it myself, and it was coming off in 27 minutes. And it makes no sense. For example, you look at other ways of doing it, and you look at work holding. So when we first started off, we kind of just delved in with the work holding, but once we found that obviously it's the tools, it's the machine tool, it's the work holding. Like people have said time and time again, without good work holding, everything's pointless. And what we did is we actually got in contact with Microlock, and they produced us a bed that went on our UMC 500, and it literally removed nearly every issue I had with work holding. Bear in mind, stainless steel, as we all know right now, the prices of material is going up and up and up. So obviously we want to be gripping on less, the minimum amount possible. So I'm gripping on 2mm, 3mm stainless. 3mm is the safe bet. Whereas you see on traditionally, people drop 20mm or 10mm into a vise. That's money. So with the right work holding, I'm still hitting it at a silly speed.
Yeah, well, we're going to go into the processes shortly, but you're absolutely right. You know, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You know, all of your links need to be as strong as possible. Now, James, I want to bring you into this podcast, really. We've been on a journey together with MTD and Haas now over the last few months, but we've also been telling some great stories on our journey together. And for me, this is an absolutely fascinating story, and it's a fantastic success story. From your perspective, can you give your views on this story? Because I'm quite flabbergasted in regards to Will's knowledge, to the company's knowledge, in regards to how far they've come in such a short period of time, and how hard that they're hitting your the parts on your machine tools.
Yes, thanks. The thing that leaps out to me is that we've talked about, as you rightly said, people's first entry into CNC machining, and a lot of those people have had experience with conventional machining before, so their natural choice of a first CNC machine is not necessarily a budget, but they've got to think about how much of an investment this is going to take me to get to that stage. And the beauty about doing that with Haas is we have got some products that absolutely talk to that, shall we say, cautious investment. And you have to learn the process of CNC machining. You have to go through the pain of getting your head around CAD/CAM and posts, as Will's just mentioned. And there are some systems out there that once you've gone through that pain, you grow out of that very, very quickly. And as these guys have found here, certainly the Super Mini Mill 2, fantastic machine, first thing that they've bought, and absolutely the right move, but very quickly, much more quickly than most people, they've grown out of it. And they didn't have to go through that whole journey again of, well, we've grown out of our first CNC, what do we go to next? Well, actually, now we've got to invest in another level of CAD/CAM, another level of control processor. No, it's just a different product in our range. And the reason is because, of course, it's the same control. It's that economy of scale of manufacture that Haas employ. Why make loads of different levels of stuff when you can just make lots of one level of stuff? It makes sense. So the power of that Haas common control has allowed these guys to very quickly move beyond 3-axis into 5-axis, into 4-axis lathes, and we're going to go on to talk about horizontal machining as well.
No, James, I think it's a great story because we've still got more of the journey to discuss in this podcast, and some of the kind of ways in which you're really kind of pushing the boundaries to everything that you can do, really. And before we get into the process, Will, Matt, you know, you've took the leap of faith from a business perspective in regard to bringing work in-house, you know, instead of it going through the subcontractors that you used to use. What benefits, you know, for potential listeners out there that may be in the same boat as you were, what benefits have you got from this now, and what benefits is your business kind of seeing?
I think the biggest benefit is the control. You know, we do development of products as well as manufacture those products. So there's kind of almost two hits here that we get away with really good. Whereas when you're developing a product and you need it to be machined, and you've got to send it out to a subcontractor, but you want something changing, or it's a small change, or no, it needs to be changed slightly this way. For us to go and do that on a small mini mill, as it was to start with, it's really easy. For us to go out there to a subcontractor and ask them to do it, it's not so easy, especially in this day and age. It's very difficult where time is costing the money. Whereas we were finding it, in my justification, it's a billet. It's a piece of metal that in proportion to the finished article is a lot less. So therefore I had that margin to play with, shall we say, with it being finished. So in my eyes, it was almost a no-brainer. It was just picking the right product and picking the right partner.
So since you've started manufacturing the parts yourself, what have you learned, and how much cost has it taken out of the part? How have you redesigned some of the components potentially?
It's educating our designers, okay, who are not CNC operators, to understand how a CNC operates and what's the best way of doing it. And for us, it's almost been like a light bulb moment. We don't need to design it with that rad in it, because we don't actually need it, because I know it's better on the CNC machine to cut it this way, because I know it'll be quicker and things like that. But I think the other thing for us is being able to react quickly. And I think having that reaction time where a possible customer can come in, and say, well, we need this. It's not a problem. We can do it. We can change it. I think because we grew so quickly, what happened with the progression from the Mini into the UMC, it was fast becoming the setup time in the UMC, which was then getting to me, because we were starting to fill and change things and add things and put things in, and I'm looking at these things. Well, okay, I need to put this product in, because we bought this machine, and yeah, I know, but it's an hour setup here and there, because having this microlock system is a really good system, no question about it. It was our next progression, but what I wanted to see is that somebody setting it up outside of the machine and the spindle turning. And, I had to square that in my own head. How can we do that? Funnily enough, the next progress was, how do you do that? Well, you need to set up outside of the machine, and okay, if that's the way, I think that's probably the way that we then went to, where if you can set up outside a machine, you can allow a machine to be running all of the time, and that was the mind thing for me. That was, yeah, that makes total sense. And so hence the next bit of the journey, was the AC400 for us, which was the next development. But, to go from a mini mill to a EC400 with a pallet loader in 2 years is a little bit, scary for starters, because you got to fill that.
I think it really leads well into the story here, and I think that it also emphasises the range that Haas Automation have got. Will, we're going to come to you very shortly about the process now, because I'm intrigued to find out what you've learnt and how you've learnt it from the Haas perspective. This must have been quite a surprise to you, James, how seeing this kind of growth and transition from a mini mill to the UMC to the EC400.
I think it would be easy to look from the outside in and think, wow, that is a surprising progression, until you understand the culture at Wath and how that decision-making process has come about, and specifically Will's understanding and actual hunger and thirst for knowledge around the process, that then makes it very easy to work with customers in this way. So I mentioned before, one of my late great father, a hero of mine, he used to have a wonderful saying in business: it's not what you know and it's not who you know, it's what you know about who you know. And what Will has been able to do is to really investigate so many different methods, get partners involved, work holding partners, tooling partners, and actually the mindset of what's possible rather than, wow, that's a big leap, has made this journey quite easy. And as Will has said earlier today, people shouldn't be intimidated by that. It's not actually a massive surprise now, knowing the characters, the culture and the drive within Wath Group. It would be a surprise for somebody to do that had been stuck with a 3-axis solution for 20 years and suddenly made the same journey. Ironically, they've got all of that depth of knowledge, but restricted almost by the experience of that knowledge. These guys just went into it with open arms and open eyes, and it's testament to it. And I think, do you know what, on a bigger picture point of view, we talked about this as well, UK manufacturing, UK innovation, absolutely we need to be embracing this stuff and get this message out there that don't be intimidated, don't be frightened, talk to us. Talk to partners, talk to other people, do the research, don't take our word for it, do what Will did, go out there and find the right solution.
Well, there's going to be videos as well on the MTD CNC channel about what we're discussing for any of the listeners listening to this podcast can view. Now, Will, I'm intrigued. So let's just kind of refresh this. 2 years. You've self-taught in regards to programming. You're pushing the boundaries in regards to pushing the machine tools to their full capabilities. Talk us through now, your transition from 5th axis to the EC400. And James, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first one in Europe, 6 pallets.
With the pallet pull, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to obviously jump back to Haas. Now, obviously we talked about the commonality of the controller. Jumping between a Super Mini Mill 2, a UMC 500, an EC 400. There isn't that much of a jump. The controller is the same throughout each machine. Our DS30Y is the same controller. The commonality between each machine is negligible, minus...
So it's made the transition
very
easier.
Easy. Combine that with the cam and the fact that we focus on the cam side and then translating that into the machines, so we don't longhand program. On the lathe, we might do a bit, but again, it's CAD driven. It's why do the hard work when the machine does the work for you? It's a no-brainer. But jumping back into the mini mill, it literally was, we had 3 vices set up, job down, keep turning depending on what face we want to do. And then obviously adding on to the research of, well, how can I do this job quicker? Why am I doing the turning? Why can't the machine turn the piece around for me? And that's kind of where it came from. It's what's the best way to hold this? So when I've transitioned to the 5-axis machine, it's, all right, let's grip it in the most sensible, secure way so I can throw this billet around. I can rip out as much metal as I want to, but maintaining that accuracy. And it's also making sure you get your clearances, making sure you get the right tooling. Like I say, it's not one thing, and this is, if I could pass any advice on to anyone just getting into this, it's not just a tool, it's not just the machine tool, it's not just the work on, it is a combination and getting the right partners. We've been very lucky because it could have gone the complete wrong way, but we got the right partners, we got the right tools, we got the right machine tools. And people need to explore it for themselves. I know it's quite a scary concept, and being a 3rd generation, there's a lot of responsibility. If I get this wrong, I'll not live this down. So I say thank you for the faith in this. Leaving your mark on it is one thing. Driving to the next stage is quite a daunting task. But jumping from the 5-axis to the EC400 wasn't a jump, and because 5-axis, I don't want to say we licked it in a few months, but we effectively did. It wasn't and I just want to relay a point. There's a difference between 3+2 and full 5-axis. So we primarily run 3+2 ops. So for any listeners not knowing what I'm talking about here, is we are just indexing the 2 extra axes to attack a face which you traditionally... Positional. You wouldn't normally be able to attack. But that 3+2 is so powerful. Now, Haas, unlike other machine tools out there, give you full 5-axis. It's all or nothing. There's none of this 4+1, which I can see some people's attraction to it. But with Haas, it's just all or nothing, which is perfect. So when I do get that job where I need to do a nice conical barrel tool, or I need to put a nice profile on a blade, it just works. I don't have to do anything special. The machine's more than powerful enough to just get on with it. But going from 5-axis to the EC400, so the EC400 is a full 4-axis machine. So there's no transition there. I'm just knocking off an axis. Now, adding the pallet pull system, that is as spoken by Matt, is so powerful, because we took the mentality, how do we get the most out of this machine? So I can set the pallets up previously at 4 o'clock. Instead of having a night shift, 3 years of a night shift is basically a machine. So you could buy another machine tool, so you may as well, if you go automation first, it pays for itself, and trying to get people's mentality around that is the next step change. But I can literally just take, because of controller, any program from the UMC 500 and put it straight on, as long as I'm not requiring the 5th axis, obviously. It just works. As long as you pay attention to your clearances and you make sure you simulate it, but that's what the cam's for. You should simulate it, check your tool paths, and just rinse and repeat. And that's what's worked, that partnership of Haas, giving us the arm around the shoulder, getting us there. But this is arm around the shoulder in the right way, and there's never been any like steering. It's just we've kind of found our own path, but just
I think the only thing I'd like to add about that, the EC400 for me has given us the flexibility to be able to react whilst an actual product is being machined, because it's got we've got the 100 tool change in there. But I want to nip in for a 3-4 hour job. I can set it up outside. Press the button, goes in and spins it out. It's all set up, and it goes back, and it carries on. So we haven't lost that setup time, which you would normally have to lose. So for me, it was about the setup. It was about being able to set up outside of the machine and then to be able to switch it in. And obviously, you need enough tools for that to be able to be done. And being able to put the sister tools in and things like that, it works really well. So for me, it's a really nice progression that allows us to grow as a company.
It does what it says on the tin.
It's
simple, and the scheduling of pallets, it is literally a simple list, and you say scheduled, unloaded, and you assign the program to that pallet, and you just queue it up. You just change the last M code to allow it to run in pallet mode, and it just keeps churning and out, and it's intuitive, it's easy, it's not complicated. With other machine tools which I looked at, you see all these wonderful bells and whistles, and I can understand how other companies would choose to go down those bells and whistles, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to sit back and think, what do I actually need to achieve the outcome I want? And that's where Haas was absolutely spot on the money. The controller does what it needs to do. Complement that with the right cam system, and you're flying. You don't need... And also, people talk about operators programming in front of the machine. If you're programming on the machine, 9 out of 10 times that machine ain't running. And also, there's no way a complicated simulation system on the machine is just adding money to the machine. Why do that? We all have computers. You should be programming offline. You should be selecting that. The EC400 allows us to set our tools offline as well, which is a nice added bonus. Around the back of the machine, you can rotate the tool changer arm, eject the tool, load the tool back in. So that machine never stops. We run sister tools for all our jobs, so there's not really an excuse. It's a very powerful piece of kit.
I think it sounds to me that you've really cracked it in this relationship. Now, James, another big point is the integrated, automation, if you like. You've got this integrated into the machine tool, not just on the horizontal, but on the lathe too.
Yeah, and I think we take it for granted because that's what we've always done. But of course, we talk to customers about the ease of use, and it's a nice thing to have. Haas make as much as they possibly can themselves. So it's our pallet pull. Therefore, the pallet pull system on the EC400 runs through the control. It's got its own page. There's no extra interface to worry about, therefore nothing to go wrong. And it's the same with the DS30Y, the Y-axis dual spindle lathe. The bar feeder that's on there is a Haas bar feeder, so there's no extra control. It all runs through the control system. The interface is there, and what we find is that if we're putting third-party rotaries, third-party interfaces on, that's where problems can occur, because you've got different sets of languages and algorithms to run, and then it's whose fault is it? It's, how do we get two engineers on site at the same time from two different companies to solve one problem? I've often used this phrase, it's our fault. If something goes wrong with a Haas setup, it's our fault. And it's engineering, things do go wrong. But we understand it, we've made it, so we can fix it. It's our fault, and it's actually quite easy because we don't have to ask for anybody else's help to get the solution. It's something we take for granted, but shouldn't, I don't think.
And I think that really that leads us on nicely to the next part of the story. I'm coming straight to you. We'll jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in, and it's part of the partnership we've had with Haas. And when I was doing the initial research of looking to get into machining, it's been dazzled by the initial price, but it's understanding what's the true cost of owning a CNC machine. So you've got to look at what comes next. Okay, your warranty is over. How much is it for your replacement parts? Where are your replacement parts? Is there a team that's going to look after your machine? And Haas tick those boxes for us. On the odd one or occasions where everyone has a bit of teething problems, the issue was solved 9 out of 10 times within 24 hours. A local engineer, a local service engineer turned up, fixed the problem, got it done. And that's what drove us back to Haas. They have a warehouse, they have parts, it's their parts, you're not relying on other people. And it's not just me singing it for the sake of singing it. I've had issues when we've been against it right at the beginning with the UMC 500, where things are broke at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've dropped a message and an engineer's turned up at 9, which might not happen in all cases, but that's the level of service I've experienced with Haas. And it's not it's a favour, just the level, but it's the quality of people that have come and supported us. And it's not even a case where one person stood out. Everyone stood out. The service engineers, the apps guys, and it's very rare you have that like melding of two people. But it's worked really well, and that's why I'm happy to sing the praise. Don't get me wrong. If it wasn't right, I'd say it wasn't right. I've always been brought up to be honest on this point, but they've looked after us, and I can't really fault that.
So this really kind of identifies the fact that you've got a fantastic working relationship, and they've installed confidence in you guys to be able to pursue this journey and to make the next investment and the next investment. And what I was just going back a point really, I think that leading on to the next part really is automation. Really, I think that. Again, in regards to people adopting automation, the UK is very slow, generally speaking, in adopting automation. There's companies that have been going 40 years in CNC machining that are still not automating. And again, you've been going 2 years. Now you've got a 6-pallet horizontal machine tool. And going from 5th axis to horizontal, some people would say, well, actually, you've gone from a 5th axis machine tool to an horizontal, but you made a really valid point that, most of the work that you do is 3+2. It's adjacent side milling effectively, and you're doing it in 2 operations, regardless if you're doing it on the UMC or the horizontal. Not all of your work needs the 5th axis simultaneous machining on it. But the automation side of things now is what I really want to touch on. Again, you've just started your CNC journey. You've gone from 5th axis, 4 axis horizontal with 6 pallets, and you're already on the automation journey with Haas. So you're growing all the way through all aspects of the manufacturing processes and automation. If I could just ask you, Matt, how you've been saying from the beginning of this podcast how it was kind of bugging you in regards to the setup time, because obviously when you're setting, the spindle is down. So now you've overcome that, and again Haas have been able to provide you with the solution to overcome that. Again, what transformation has that made to your manufacturing processes and profitability and productivity?
It is. It's huge. It's one of the biggest things for me was to have those spindles turning. If they're not turning, they're not actually making us money, if you know what I mean. So when they were actually setting up the jobs, it really did. It really bugged me. And I know it shouldn't, but it did. And I think that was the drive and the passion to get, right, okay, how do we get that up? We know we still need a machine, which is why the UMC 500 works so well. It's very it can do everything almost that we need it to do. But on the big jobs that now we're going from the design jobs to a production, we need to transfer that. And that, for me, that UMC 400 is the best thing for me, because it just allows us to grow. You know, and you put this work holding on that we do, the tower, from Microlock, and that works perfect. You know, it means that we can load 8, 12 at a time, 4 on each face or 3 on each face, and load it. We could multiple change the ways that it's run as well. So you're having actual finished product come off. But again, if you need something to fill into that particular time, because a job comes in, it's an emergency job that needs to come in, I need to put it on, it's not a problem, because it can be set up outside.
So your business now has got full flexibility.
It
it's
has.
fully automated.
Yeah.
It's more profitable. You're expanding and growing. And from a business perspective, you know, you've only just started this new journey, really, realistically, in actually manufacturing. You know, you've still got different elements to your business. Where do you see the manufacturing side of your business going?
For me, it's integral, because for us as a company, we want to be able to design and manufacture products both for ourselves and other people. But it means that we hold everything that goes on. So we are the masters of our own destiny. And if we can do that, one, it means that you can keep the raw billet, or not the finished item, in stock, which means that if I can turn it quickly into a finished part or a sub-assembly quickly, I'm not having to keep large amounts of stock on board. So the flexibility for us it's great. So the size of it as well, the flexibility for us allows us to grow. Do I see it growing and growing? Yeah, I do. It's a bit frightening, really, because to go from 2 years of nothingness to get to this point and have these 3, and looking at potentially maybe another 2 as well, because I said to Will before, you know, you get the machines, I'll fill them. But the problem is, I'm filling them with even bigger sizes. You know, it's like, well, it doesn't fit this one. I need the bigger one. And I think that's one of his issues, isn't it? Is to be able
yet to have a job that isn't bigger. It's always something.
Yeah.
It's always something different. But jumping back on the capabilities, the whole point was, it's like when I was talking earlier with yourself. It's the whole idea of Wath Group was to be able to a client sit with us on a Monday. Back of a fag paper, design, drawing, we can 3D print in-house, we can put together a prototype, they come back on a Tuesday, it's done overnight. Okay, we can expand and we can change it. Follow a week through, Wednesday, okay, we're happy, properly make the PCB, make the cable assembly, machine in-house. A client can do a full turnkey project with us in a week. We have electrical department, we have our hose department, we have cabinet builders, we have everything. It's specialist subcontract manufacturing and also our own product range. That makes it quite powerful, and I'd almost challenge anyone to try and do the same. I didn't have grey hairs when I first started this. It's part and parcel of it, but it's that key ability, and the machine tools has allowed us to get that extra arm. It's multiple pillars, especially in the current climate as well. This climate, financially, and the business climate is so changing. Obviously, peaks and troughs at the moment, but having that extra security, stainless steel right now is on a rise. Obviously, with everyone blames the transport industry and everything like that, but by having the control of that stock, we don't have to make it until it's needed. Somebody rings me up, I can turn that billet into something else. It's my choice. I can make whatever I want.
You've added, certainly added more strings to your bow, if you like, within the business. You've diversified with the help of Haas and the CNC machines that you've introduced to your business. And I said earlier, really, you know, you've got so much knowledge within the business, and that knowledge is really growing, isn't it? James, you know, unfortunately, we've got to wrap up this podcast. We're nearly to the end of this podcast, but it's been an absolute pleasure learning about you guys and the business and what you do. James, can we come back here again when they've made their next investments? Because I'm intrigued to see how far this is going to go. I think I can really. We've just seen the machining facility, and it's a massive. Well, you've got 40,000 square foot facility, if that's correct. And there's still plenty of room for plenty more machines. So I reckon, and I'm going to put a bet on this with you, James, that this is going to be filled up rather quickly. And I reckon you're going to have more grey hairs the next time I come to visit.
I'm just looking at all the different models we can probably try and get in, and then one of everything.
It's the challenge. Again, we make our own stuff. We don't really advertise for external work, but if people need that help, come to us. That's the way we work. We're not about the old-fashioned way we're doing. We're about building partners, and that's customers and suppliers.
And Will and Matt, can I just finish really with a final question? If you had to give any of our listeners any advice on, starting to bring work in-house, if you're subcontracting work out, automating, and kind of, in regards to machine tool selection and any kind of tips on learning, start with you really, Matt. If you could,
I think for me it was a big leap of faith to start with, especially having no CNC experience at all. I would suggest go out there, we found Haas. I've had a long relationship with F1. That was kind of my thing, because mine was Haas, F1. They're at the pinnacle. They know that they're machining. They know what they're looking for. They look at things in a different way, out of the box. That was our personal journey. It might not necessarily be everybody's personal journey, but all I say is find a partner. Understand, make sure that they understand you and you understand them, what they can give you and what we can give back to them as well, because it's a partnership. It's a win-win. It needs to be a win-win. At the end of the day, Haas needs to sell machines. We need to buy a machine to allow us to make things. That just happens to be the partnership that we've gone on this journey with. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, of course I am.
Well,
Just to add that, it's do your research. I can't stress, do not jump at the first shiny pebble. It's understand what you actually require. Think about, how can I hold this product? There might be the odd one or two occasions where you think, do I really need to do this? Challenge yourself, but don't be afraid, again, to go for it. It's about that balance. Do I need it? What will it get me? But again, I can't stress it. The only way you're going to find out is by doing it, and sometimes it is too easy to get stuck in the rut, to get comfortable. But if you're not moving forward, you're dying as a business.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And just to finish off on that, I would say to anybody out there, talk to us, because if you throw a problem at us and we can't crack it, we will tell you immediately. Because as an organisation, and Matt mentioned, the pinnacle of F1, we have a brand. We have a really strong brand to protect. And if it's a challenge that we can't do, we'll tell you. Because the last thing we want to do is to sell a load of machine tool kit into an environment where we know it won't work, and therefore all we'll end up is earning resentment, and quite rightly so. So we know where we're positioned. We know the strength of our brand. We know what we can support technically and after sales, as William and Matt have kindly said today. So talk to us and we'll give you an honest appraisal of where we can take your business.
Some brilliant points. Thanks, James, and thanks, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you today. I've really enjoyed it. So for our listeners, I hope you've really enjoyed this podcast. If you want to learn more, please comment or give us a call. All of us are on LinkedIn, so you can contact us all personally if you have any further questions. But I'm going to just leave you with Will's point, really. If you stay still, effectively you're moving backwards because everyone else is going to be progressing. So always invest, but make sure you do your research. Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.